Hello and welcome back to Data News of the Week. That is right, this is the video where we go through all the little blibs and blobs of news stories that have happened all throughout the week that involve data that I couldn't squeeze into any other videos. And this week there's quite a good varied selection to discuss, so let's get straight on with it. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but if you are a Synology NAS user that takes advantage of a lot of that NVR stuff, little cameras dotted around all over the place, I'm pleased to confirm that now Surveillance Station version 9 is available to download in beta. That's right, you don't have to go for the rigmarole that we saw with DSM-7. You don't have to sign up the things and enter your key and then hopefully get something. None of that. Just go straight to your application center and go to where it says betas, or if you haven't enabled that, go into the settings of the app center and then enable the access to beta applications, and then the beta tab will arrive and boom, whether you're on DSM 6.2 or DSM 7, Surveillance Station version 9.0, the beta will be available to download. But a few things you should know straight off the bat. Again, this is a beta, so it's not going to be as smooth or completely as stable as the current version of Surveillance Station 8.2. Indeed, if you go to the release notes for this, and again, we've done a whole article on this on NAS Compares. Hopefully that's linked in the description or on screen because I'm that subtle. There are a couple of things to bear in mind. Number one, it's worth mentioning that not all the new and promised features of Surveillance Station 9 are active right now. There's a few things on there that aren't fully equipped right now, such as C2 recording, the ability to dual record onto the NAS and the C2 cloud simultaneously. That's coming soon. And another thing, if you do install this, you can't roll it back. That's right. If you install Surveillance Station 9.0 beta, you can't roll it back to 8.2. You're just going to have to wait for another complete release of Surveillance Station. So if you do utilize Surveillance Station for business, for mission critical stuff, or to, pretty much define and cover all of the stuff in your home or office environment, maybe don't install it. But I will be doing a full overview of that platform very, very soon. I recommend you check that out. Carrying on the subject of NAS software, we've gone good, and unfortunately, we've got to go a bit bad. Earlier this week, it was pretty much out there that TerraMaster have had a ransomware attack. If you are a TerraMaster user, you may be aware of this. TerraMaster have bunged on a few of their social platforms and on their forums. A kind of a variant, kind of a rejig of the Echorax ransomware that was floating around on the internet around about 18 months ago. Not dissimilar to stuff that we've seen on Synology and QNAP in the past. Unfortunately, TerraMaster are very much straight there in the target sites. They originally clocked on about the 12th of Jan, the earliest reports on this, but it does seem like this is something that had been floating around since December as well. A lot of users have woken up to find their TerraMaster NAS that they've connected to the internet to be encrypted with a little ransomware note there, pay me X Bitcoin if you will. Now again, this is another thing we covered on NAS Compares, a lot of plugs today. So I do recommend you check that out from earlier this week. But at the moment, if you have been targeted and hit by this, there isn't a resolution in place right now. We have talked about in the past some of the other times that we've seen people's servers get attacked, and there have been decryption tools out there. There's been a few of them floating around, the bloody tools, for example. But there's nothing in place right now for people that have been hit by the TerraMaster ransomware attack recently. And again, there's indications that this has come about via a vulnerability that was found within the UPnP protocol there, which again is not great at all. Of all the ways this could happen, it means that with that protocol connecting with the general environment of your network, the NAS doesn't strictly need to be connected to the internet in the conventional ways when you're using remote cloud access via TOS. So again, if you are running a TerraMaster NAS, even with the latest version, I think until a fix is up there on this, I would recommend taking that TerraMaster NAS completely disconnected from internet connectivity in its entirety. I did look at the latest version of TerraMaster's TOS version 5. We did a brief preview earlier this week when we were looking at it, and that does seem to have a few complete disconnection options built into the control panel there. If you go to the forum on TerraMaster, there's lots of talk there from the TerraMaster customer services reps as well as other users themselves that are saying, oh, I've been encrypted, I'm just going to format the whole thing. Unless you need your NAS like urgently for your storage, if you don't have any backups to that data, I would maybe hold on to that encrypted data just for a little bit longer, because we've seen multiple examples in the past during these ransomware attacks. Within a few weeks of the initial targeted devices getting hit, that decryption tools have come out there. Yes, as soon as these arrive, the attack patterns and the encryption methods, the algorithms that these attackers use do change. But if you're in the first wave of these, when those decryption tools maybe get released, you're able to recover your data. We saw it with QRescue. We've seen it previously with decryption tools that have taken advantage of PhotoRec that, rolls back and finds the earlier versions of files. So for now, unless your system is mission critical, your storage is mission critical, or you already had a backup in place, so it doesn't matter, try to hold on to the encrypted files a little bit longer rather than paying the ransom, because I think recovery tools for this may still arrive, but we'll have to wait and see. Next up, I want to talk about an awesome little upgrade that's been worked on, that was sent to me by Eddie the Web Guy himself, who fired it through to me about the idea of adding 10 GBE to NASes. For those who aren't aware, I'm going to check my notes. InnoDisk, you may not know about them. They have produced a beautiful little adapter known as, get ready for a catchy name, the EGPLT101. What does that mean? Well, it is an M.2 to 10 GBE adapter. You've heard me right. We've seen USB to 5 GBE, we've seen 10 GBE PCI upgrade cards, but this is an adapter with a heatsink attached that takes advantage of the Marvell Q-Action controller, that 10 GBE Ethernet controller. It slots into your M.2 slot, and there's a data pass-through cable that goes into a tiny little PCB with a 10 GBE, a 10G base T copper connector there that allows you to have a 10 GBE connection into that M.2 slot. Now, this is very important. Right now, obviously, this is very early doors. Obviously, this isn't going to work on a QNAP or a Synology or anything like that at the moment. But it almost certainly works, as we've seen from the drivers and the software they're providing, on a standard Linux platform. So the logic is there. And we've seen a lot of NASes arriving with M.2 upgrades, lots of at least Gen 2 times 2, which again can provide 1000 megs bandwidth there. So this adapter, much like we saw with the QNAP 5 GBE adapter, like the one up there, people come up with soft hacks. They come up with unofficial drivers that can be injected into the NAS to utilize this, and I will not be surprised if we see the ability to take advantage of this adapter on a QNAP, on a Synology NAS later down the line via the M.2 connector. I imagine QNAP will release their own version in due course. They do that. But Synology, I reckon, will be a lot more restrictive about that. But we've seen unofficial SPKs arrive on the scene that allow Synology users to take advantage of devices like this. And think about your DS920 being able to add a 10 GBE network port via those the M.2 connectors there. Having 10 GBE on that, beautiful stuff. One downer at the moment, this is an incredibly unique piece of hardware as an upgrade, and unsurprisingly, it does not come cheap. Currently retailing for $166 on the official website there. It's quite steep when you think about a 10 GBE card you can pick up these days for £90 to £100. It does have like a 3-year warranty. It seems to be fully tested, but still nonetheless, this is technology that I'm hoping will move forward into something not only a lot easier to install, because remember, we are still talking about naked PCBs here, but still, very interesting development here, and something I really wanted to talk about. And I hope I get one here in the studio eventually, because I want to see how this thing works out. And finally, we can talk about Wi-Fi 7. That's right, Wi-Fi doesn't seem to stand still. We went so long with wireless connectivity as we know it, largely remaining pretty much the same with a few improvements in security and packet control. And all of a sudden, 6, 6E, and now 7 are on the scene. Wi-Fi 7 that's promoting speeds of 2.4 times the potential maximum bandwidth of Wi-Fi 6. So again, we are talking 23 gigabits per second, so that's 200 to maybe 230, 240 megabytes per second wireless throughput. This is genuinely going to be the first real challenger to standard gigabit Ethernet in terms of coverage. It's taken advantage of 2.4, 5 and 6 gigahertz frequencies there, which is lovely stuff. And on top of that, MediaTek, who are pretty much behind the majority of this, are hosting live demos showing this off. Now, live, unfortunately, does not mean you can find it online right now. You have to contact them if you're a special business user, and they'll host a private demonstration, but they are out there showing this off. This is the first real utilization and demonstration of Wi-Fi 7 out there. They're saying that, real adoption and rollout, it's not going to happen anytime before midway through 2023, which again, when we're here in January 2022, That's a long old way away, but still nonetheless it's interesting to see things moving forward on this, and particularly for those of you that looked at Wi-Fi 6E and went, well, it's all right, but other than the 6 gigahertz band, I'm not feeling it. So that's great. Wi-Fi 7 next year, guys. Get on it. And just before I wrap things up, normally I wouldn't talk about this subject because it's not really anything specifically to do with data, but come on, we've got to talk about the biggest story right now in terms of the gaming industry right now. Microsoft buying Activision, Blizzard, and pretty much owning now some of the greatest IPs in the last 10 to 15 years of gaming. That is huge for $70 billion, which is a number which, quite frankly, I find as alien as aliens themselves. But the reason I wanted to talk about this, and I'm going to make a whole dedicated video on this in the next couple of weeks, because I think it's something that I think a lot of people are shying away from as a topic. I'm going to touch on it lightly here, and that's a lot to do with games that you probably have purchased in the last few years for your PS3, 4, and 5. Now, right now, obviously those games are still available, and there's been lots of statements from Blizzard, from Microsoft, and Sony chipping in as well regarding agreements. That existing agreements are, of course, going to be honoured. Everyone knows that, but anyone that's ever been following online gaming purchases for the last few years will be well aware of how easily games can disappear from your local online store. Now, by that what I mean is, you've purchased a game, you've bought a game, you've got a limited amount of storage on your console, and time from time, you're going to delete them to make more space, and you go, it's all right, I've got it up there on the cloud, I'll download it at a later date when I want to have it. But what about it's not on the store any longer? Because there have been repeated examples over the last few years of the end of licenses, or just simple general end of period license expiring, where games get removed from e-outlets. Now, we have seen this happen many, many times, particularly in the Nintendo shops as well, where as a license draws to a close, games get removed. We've seen it also with games such as the GTA Definitive Edition and updated versions of games where the previous iteration was removed from store for tactical reasons. It is not impossible to imagine that a lot of the games that you've purchased in the past, where Activision Blizzard are paying obviously continued fees to support these games to remain on available service on eShops, to not be there anymore. Tactically, if you're going to spend 70 billion, this is a silly number, 70 billion on acquiring a company and all of its IPs, one of the ways in which you might want to twist the knife with your competitors is once hosting licensing agreements on e-outlets expire, that you choose not to renew them. So the reason I'm adding this at the end of this video, and again, I'll be going to this in way more detail later on, is I think a lot of people have to at least anticipate that maybe, when we're talking a long time, 2022, 3, 4, 5, again, bear in mind, this deal isn't even going to be wrapped up until midway through 2023 at least. That's the expiry date on this deal to be concluded. But there's a real possibility that years down the line, a lot of the games that you have purchased, if you don't have them downloaded, you may lose access to them entirely. So this is where your data comes in. Maybe take a little look and see which games you own from those IPs, because there's every possibility that it might be worth plugging them to one side on an external USB, plugging them on that M.2 SSD or whatever. But this has been Data News of the Week. I hope you enjoyed this. Click like if you did and subscribe to learn more. And again, there's links to all of the stuff we talked about today in the description. But otherwise, have a great weekend and I will see you next week.